if somebody is shelling out big money, they are expecting something in return, and you're setting yourself up for that type of dynamic. And I've said this over and over and over. Do not go on those high-end dates to begin with, because it just starts everything off on this huge level of expectation. And if that's not something you're comfortable with, you need to avoid it. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Dating Today, a conversation about modern dating issues. Today, I'm joined with Carlos, my good friend. He's somebody who we have been having conversations about our personal dating experiences, and how in this episode, we're going to be talking about healthy mutual reciprocation.
Add it up.
Carlos, this is something that you and I have talked about probably for like 2.5 years, because it's something we have either experienced personally or we hear from our friends. What is it about healthy mutual reciprocation that seems to be so difficult about getting?
Well, I think really it's about those first couple months, and that's primarily what we're talking about.
Sure.
If you're in a relationship, if you've committed to another person, there should be pretty healthy reciprocation. And if there's some red flags there, then we're having a different conversation about why you're committing there.
Sure.
But primarily what we're talking about is those first couple dates to like those first couple months, and making sure that the relationship is balanced, right? Like the financial aspects of the relationship, the time commitment that is involved in the relationship.
Absolutely.
Who's initiating when and how, and what's expected, and all of those is really what we're talking about. Because if you don't have a good foundation in those first couple weeks, those first couple months, then it doesn't matter what you go on to build or don't build. Like,
For sure.
Things could get really, really rocky really, really quick if you're not on the same page. So
Absolutely. And it's a tricky balance when you're first starting out. You know, men, we want to chase. We want to be able to chase. Women, you want to be chased. We this is an age-old dynamic. We're all aware of this. But being able to balance it so it doesn't feel like you're playing games. Like, oh, I need to wait a little bit to respond to a text. Oh, maybe I need to cancel this date, and maybe he'll suggest later, or vice versa. The guy will think like, hey, maybe I need to just make myself really busy and be suggested as more high value because I got a lot of things going on. I think that this is like kind of what muddles up those first couple of dates and those exchanges and things like that. And when you're setting the tone for any type of relationship, that balance, that mutual investment, that moment when a guy messages you and says, hey, I'd like to take you out, and maybe you cancel. A good way of reciprocating that, say, if you do have to cancel, is you initiating a date back, is not waiting for him to suggest another one. And those are the types of like little things that we see on both ends. It's not just women and not just men, but we're doing this kind of equally. If we can get these things really under control, I think that a lot of relationships that have a lot of potential can do and go much further than really what we see, which is just a couple months and then they fizzle out, because most of the time somebody feels like they're putting more work in than the other person, and that's never a good feeling to be in, especially when you're really, really trying. I think that's probably the most frustrating thing. What are some of the experiences that you want to pull from?
Yeah, I think it's tough, and we have several examples from the guy side of maybe how in general men don't reciprocate women's actions, or vice versa, right? We have other examples from the women, but for me, I think most recently there's two kind of main avenues that this falls in. Sure. The first one is like initial communication, right? Okay. So in those first couple months, it's almost expected that the guy's gonna initiate every morning with that, like, "Hey, good morning" text.
Good morning text.
Like, and it's amazing when it works, right? But when you're the person saying good morning or whatever it is, right? Initiating, "Hey, how's your day? What's going on?" Whatever it is, the initial breaking of the ice on a daily basis. Yeah. If you're not getting anything back consistently where they're either then pushing the conversation forward with another question, right? Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing? What's on your schedule?
Right.
When there's no investment to find out what's going on in your life.
Right. Returning the energy.
Yeah. Then you're gonna get burnt out. And I have as a guy recently just been like, you're telling me that you want me to communicate with you more. But when I look at the text, like it's every morning that I say what's up, and every day you're like, not much, and then that's it. Like, what am I supposed to communicate with a wall?
Right.
Like that's,
or maybe they
work.
do tell you, I'm about to go get something to eat. Okay, you want to ask about my day?
Yeah,
do you care about what I'm doing, how I'm feeling? Like, that's the reciprocation that, at least from the male perspective, like we are wanting. And then we get women that will be like, I guess he just lost interest, and I just started feeling the energy change. And you're like, well, let me look at these texts. And being a dating coach, I get a very unique privilege in being able to dissect communication and patterns of investment. And I see this a lot, and I see it from guys and women. So I'm not like knocking either one. I'm knocking you both. When one person is doing all that type of investment, and they're doing all the all the initiating, and you can see they're really trying, and the energy just isn't the same. And you might actually be genuinely interested, and I think that's really what sucks is later finding out once they start losing interest. Now you start trying. It's like it's too late. It's too late. You should have been doing that weeks ago from the get go. But we're all trying to play these games of like who cares less, and honestly, that's a race to the bottom.
Yeah,
that's really what that is. Who can care less? It's like, well, I'm going to show you who can care less. I'm going to go somewhere where somebody genuinely cares about my investment, my energy, my time. But the question really is, where is this coming from? Like, why do we have this feeling of, I need to make sure that they're investing in me to make sure they really care? Like, where does this come from? Is it entitlement? Is it like needs for security? Like, what do you think it is?
Honestly, I'll take it to a more like basic human thing. Like, honestly, I think we've all been hurt. Like, dating sucks. And being in relationships with other people, like, isn't easy. Whatever you want to call it, whatever your issues and relationships have been in the past, like, it's not easy. So in those first couple months, like, you're really trying to figure out how vulnerable you're going to be with somebody.
For sure.
And if you're the one who's being vulnerable, whether that's like creating a table to come to and say, hey, like, we should have a conversation here. Like, that takes a certain amount of vulnerability, right? So when that doesn't get matched, then we all tense up like, I'm not going down that road to be hurt again.
That looks suspicious. Don't want to get hurt.
And the same thing with finances, right? So guys have all been on that date where you sit across from a woman and you're like, she is only here because I'm going to pay for this date, and she expects me to do that, and this sucks.
Right.
Like, we've all felt that. We've all been in those moments of like being hurt. So I think it's.
But and real quick on that, we know women. You're on the other side of that, like. Oh, he's expecting something at the end of this date. So there's always like these expectations, this almost an entitlement. Like, oh, if me as a guy, I pay, I should be getting something in return. And it's not just your time. Trust me, ladies. Most guys that are shelling out $100, they are not just thinking about sitting there having a conversation and dining on a first date. If somebody is shelling out big money, they are expecting something in return, and you're setting yourself up for that type of dynamic. And I've said this over and over and over. Do not go on those high-end dates to begin with, because it just starts everything off on this huge level of expectation. And if that's not something you're comfortable with, you need to avoid it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think then we get into this like cat and mouse thing of like, again, like chasing somebody that doesn't want to be chased, or even the word chase, like it implies that something is running away from you.
Sure.
Like, I don't want to be in a relationship with anybody or anything that is purposefully running away from me. Like,
because those are games. Those are games, like, essentially.
We're not going to do that. But what I will do is I'll initiate and be open, and like I said, have that vulnerability to come to the table and say, like, I'm here. I'm willing to have these conversations. I'm willing to invest financially with my time. I'm willing to have you in my home, in my space, like physically. Like, and if you're not willing to do that at a 60-40, like 50-50 level, then
I was going to say, fuck that. No, 50-50.
Really don't have but it isn't always going to be that, right? So it might be 60-40 financially on my side or on somebody's side. And then, you know, with space, it's 60-40. So eventually it balances to 50-50. And so I want to be on the same page there.
As long, so whatever someone's able to do, say financially, if they're doing what they can at an equal ratio, that is still 50-50. I mean, if you're making twice as much, and this is for women too, who are bosses out there, they're pulling in a lot of money. If your guy's putting in ratioed wise, like the same, like that's a 50-50 investment. But that's what we're wanting. We want, reciprocated investment. And what was it that we were just talking about here? About well, it was
just the different ways that there's reciprocation, or I think, you know, there's different portions of entitlement from both sides, right? From women, oftentimes you get that, like, we're going out for a free meal. From guys, the same situation. They expect sex at the end of it, or some sort of, you know, making out or something, right? Absolutely. Like, which is not healthy. And so I think we talk about two things on the shows consistently, and your content pretty consistently. The first being standards, right? And then the second, like, open and honest communication all the way through that, right? So I think if you're going to come to the table and be vulnerable and initiate conversation, then the standard for me is going to be that you do that back, that you show interest in my life. And then if you don't meet that standard, then I'm going to be open and honest with the fact that, like, you're not doing that. And the people who can do that and say, hey, like, this doesn't quite match what I need, what I want. If you can't step up to the plate, cool. Give them a chance. If it doesn't work out, then by 2 or 3 dates, you should know what fits and what doesn't.
Absolutely.
And you should be out. But I think that takes, like, knowledge of a person's standards, and
it
most
does.
times people don't have those. They don't have those standards set.
I would say, just from my coaching experience, I'd say close to 75% of people do not have their standards in place, and they only start thinking of their standards once they feel they've been violated, once they feel they've compromised or they've been done wrong. And we get angry at the other person when secretly we're really angry at ourselves for allowing that to happen. It's like, damn it, if I had just spoken the way that I felt in that moment, this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have happened for as long as it did. You know, I'd be able to communicate clearly, like, hey, that good morning text really means a lot to me. Just something like that will keep that continuing to happen. But when it doesn't feel like it's even being appreciated or acknowledged, or it's being taken for granted, like, no one's going to keep doing stuff for anybody if they don't feel appreciated. Like, you're going to start putting your time and your investment somewhere else. So that time only has so much expiration to it.
So. I actually read something pretty recently, and this is a little bit counterintuitive, definitely counterintuitive, and a little bit shocking.
Okay.
But it said, you don't give something to somebody else so that they like you.
Yep.
When you give something to somebody else, you like them more.
For sure.
Like, it's the other way, right? So if you're giving your time, you're giving your initiation, you're giving your money, your space, that's so that that person likes you more. And if when they blank out or they don't give you anything back, that feels hollow, right?
Yeah.
So then that person will naturally just stop giving.
For sure. Well, it feels like a betrayal of like, your focus in a way. Like you just said, like, giving at the most genuine aspect is just doing it freely without any true expectation in return. But that's only for like 1 or 2 offs. Once you start trying to do this and create a pattern and you're seeing nothing really happening, you kind of get a little bit burnt out. You start losing the motivation, and you're just like, why am I even doing this? I could be doing this for somebody that truly appreciates it, and that's what ends up happening. We just go somewhere else.
Yeah, and this isn't, Mr. Darcy, like there isn't only like 2 or 3 women or 2 or 3 men out there. Like now there's dating apps, there's social media, there's a million options out there. And it's like, why would we continue to bang our head against this wall when there's a million other options of somebody who's going to treat me better or mutually reciprocate what I'm here to offer.
Yeah.
So I think a question I had for you, then going back to standards, is how before getting into a dating relationship or when you're talking to somebody, like, how do you advise people to create those standards, right? What are the healthy standards that's going to keep you from going 6 dates deep? You've spent $800 and like she doesn't even text you back.
For sure. Man, that's probably one of the best questions that's been asked on this podcast, because that's something that I work, like it is the very foundation to my coaching is standards. And if you don't have those, that's the very first thing I will confront is their level of standards. Like, how have your dating experiences been? What were your relationships? Why did they fail? Was it communication? Was it time? Was it were you focused on something else? Like, what were the things that caused that relationship to fail? And we will dissect that and find that every single time, not most of the time, every single time, it is because there's a lack of standards somewhere. Well, I thought this would just happen one time. Well, it happened 6 times. So at what point did you not see the pattern? Okay, well, that is now a standard. We're going to write this down. We're going to do a list of standards that you allowed to be betrayed in the past that you will never allow to have happen again. And the list of standards that people end up writing down are so long.
Yeah.
Because once you start thinking about the times that you were hurt, that you were betrayed, the frustration that you even have with yourself by letting it even happen, you just unload. I will never let these things happen. So that's the very, very first step and most important step in creating standards. Writing them down, holding yourself accountable to them, identifying them in the future, and then being able to communicate them. Being able to communicate your standards. If you can't do that, you will never have a successful relationship. And I'll say that, and I will die on that hill. If you don't have your standards and can communicate them in an attractive, pleasant way, you'll never have a happy, healthy relationship. Without that, just stay single until you get your standards in check. The thing that I was on this train of thought, and then I was like, wait, what were we talking about? It was about the unspoken entitlement.
Okay.
And and I'm going to speak for women here. Give me this grace, ladies.
Good luck.
Unspoken entitlement. Where do a lot of women get their sense of entitlement? We all have it. Men have it too. But I'm just talking for women because there's not a woman here. We get it from the way that we're raised. Our parents, Disney, society,
the princess mentality.
All that tells women what men must do for them, how men must present themselves to them, how men must behave and invest around them. But nobody says, this is what you need to do in return. There is no Disney princess that's talking about that. No parent is telling you once he does this, this is how you need to be in return. That is not a conversation that happens, and it's a conversation I want to challenge women and the sisterhood to start having with each other. Because when a guy doesn't do exactly what you're wanting, we get the labels, men are trash. Men don't listen. Men don't communicate. It's like, I'm sorry, of all these texts that I decipher, all these conversations I have, women aren't very good at communicating with their men. It just kind of is what it is. Now, I'm not going to say men are the best communicators either.
No, we're all at fault.
We're all at fault, but understanding where we're both coming from is going to be so important in those very early stages of dating, those first 3 weeks to 3 months. Understanding why somebody expects to be receiving those good morning texts. Like, we do it. Why do we think that women expect that? Because they've been told to expect that. Hey, if a guy's not doing this, he doesn't care. It's like, no. He's either done it and gotten burnt out because he's done this for 5 other women and has never gotten it reciprocated, or you just haven't communicated what's important to you. So like I said earlier, if you say those good morning texts, like they set my day up beautifully. Thank you so much for doing that. It means so much to me. Guys need to hear that. We just do. And if you're wanting a guy to do something really good for you, tell him you like it. I mean, and it'll keep us focused and motivated. Yep. We just need to know that's what you're wanting.
Yeah. Or do it first. You know how many times we've sat with our friends and been like, yo, this girl I went out with, or my girlfriend, or this person I've been seeing did this thing, initiated in this way, and that was so dope. I can't wait to do it back to her. Like, surprise her in some way. Or, yo, she planned the whole date, and she just told me to show up, and we did it. Like, when a woman takes that step, that's when it's like, okay, cool.
Sure.
I'm right there with you. But you don't hear about that stuff happening pretty often.
You don't, and it does come down to that balance. You're trying to, again, the masculine urge is to chase, the feminine is to be chased. We get it, we understand, but that can't be the only way that dynamic is. It does have to have a little bit of a shift at times. So yes, ladies, you can definitely initiate the communication, setting up the dates, paying for the dates, planning a mini getaway. Just the texting, you can start the day. You can say, hey, hope you have a great day at work. You have no idea what that means for a guy to get that. So just really want to encourage healthy reciprocation, and it doesn't need to just be one-sided, especially if you're really liking the guy. And guys, also just make sure that you're not going too far with your investment. Ladies, make sure you're not going too far with yours. It needs to be reciprocated. I always have this analogy because people always go against me when I say this, which is you don't put all the eggs in one basket. That's what everybody's afraid of. Well, I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket. I'm like, I never tell you to do that. It's an egg for an egg. He puts one in yours, you put one in his. Back and forth, back and forth. And then if things don't work out, you don't feel like you just got taken for a ride. So that's really what's important about those early stages, creating healthy reciprocation, making sure that both of you are mutually invested. You have any other thoughts before we close out?
Oh, as always, I think it's just about being honest about your standards, your frame, what you want a relationship to look like, what
communicating that.
Yeah, what your past is like, what you want your future to be like, and being open and honest. And if that doesn't match with the other person, then you communicated it early, and you're much better off without all the heartache and drama.
That's it. Solid. All right. Well, we're going to close this episode out, but I wanted to just mention, and if you're interested in any of my coaching, go to brockolson.com/services. Check out some of my coaching packages, and I think that's about it. All right, guys. Thank you so much. See you guys later.
Add it up.